Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I actually wanted to upload this video yesterday, but my mic sort of died on me and I did not want to upload it with only music without telling my little story, so I actually waited till today to upload it for you guys. I ordered a new mic from Amazon, so thank you Amazon Prime because it just arrived and I just opened it. So yeah, the mic came today and I'm really excited for that. I'm excited to have new sound and I hope that the sound quality is at least a little bit better so I could continue with my video tutorials and also my soon-to-be streams. So this time-lapse is focused on Little Red Riding Hood. It's a classic tale of a young girl and a big bad wolf. Although I did not draw her so little like a child, such as in the story, but I did draw her more so of a young woman. So for this painting I ditched the Disney character look and went back to my roots. Not only in the sense of the drawing style, but also with the fact that I'm using mixed media. I used a whole lot of art products, but started off with a base of watercolor, which is basically typical brushes and bunny style. I then built layers of details with the Polychromos pencil crayons, the pastels, and the markers. For those of you who are interested, you can find all of my art materials listed below in the description. Little Red Riding Hood's story is one that is quite dear to me. As a child, I was always sort of intrigued by the prospect of a big bad wolf stalking a girl in the forest and ultimately disguising itself as her grandmother. When I actually think back on it, I don't really remember the story being violent, but I guess that was because our 21st century tale was toned down a lot just to suit the sensibility of children. What I do, however, remember is that the lesson that I learned from reading the story is to not talk with strangers. And I guess sort of that this was kind of the whole point of the story, at least from my perspective. The tale itself is an old European story and its origins can be traced back to the 10th century. Traces of the story can be found in Italian, French, and German culture. So the earlier versions of the story pretty much differ from what we know today. Sometimes the wolf was an ogre, or also known as a werewolf, which at the time was a little bit relevant due to the fact that there were in fact werewolf trials in 1589. So the story changed over the years tremendously. There were versions of Little Red cannibalizing her own grandmother, of the wolf eating the girl, of Little Red escaping without the help of the woodcutter, so on and so forth. The story of Little Red Riding Hood really kicked off in the 17th century when French author Charles Perrault wrote Le Petit Chaperon Rouge, which was one of the earliest known printed versions. The story was a hell of a lot darker and was the first time that the Red Hood was introduced to have symbolic significance. In this version, Little Red gets basically eaten by the wolf and the wolf has won, so there's actually no happy ending. Charles Perrault meant to have this tale told as sort of a lesson on morals, and basically the lesson was that a young lass who is pretty and well bred shall do wrong to listen to strangers, which still pretty much holds today because that's exactly the sort of lesson I got as a child when reading this story. It's also presumed that this tale was written to entertain the French court of King Louis VIII. Then comes my favorite part of history, so we skip all the way to the 19th century, which is probably the best century, where the Grimm brothers retell the story, which is known in German as Rotkäppchen. This version was a much tamer version, as it was targeted towards children, and it's also probably the closest rendition of the story that I grew up with, which is why I had such pleasure seeing one of the original first printed copies of the book at the Grimm Brother Museum in Kassel, Germany. It was probably one of the coolest things I had ever seen. It was totally awesome. So for those of you who are in the area in Kassel, Germany, I would definitely recommend going to see the Grimm exhibition at the Grimm Brother Museum. Now to get back to the actual painting, I did focus a lot more on Little Red Riding Hood's face. I wanted to capture the sense of realism, and to do this I used a mixture of watercolor, pastels, pencil crayons, and markers. So it's a really nice blend of all four elements together. And this was a little bit difficult actually to get the face right. So I wanted the face to have a smooth texture, and I kind of screwed up with the watercolor actually. I didn't use the proper colors, and it ended up being sort of like a muddy mess, but I corrected this with the PanPastel artist pastels. So it really helped to blend the kind of muddy mess that I had made. So in the end, it actually did not look too bad. And for the hair, I didn't focus on too much detail. I really like the watercolor effect that I had created, sort of just like a gradient effect with the hair. We started off a little bit darker at the top, and then it graded off into a lighter version of the auburn brown. I didn't put too much effort in the hair. It's just a little bit of highlights with the Polychromos pencil crayon, so I used a white pencil crayon. Apart from that, I used marker. So there's kind of like a cartoonish trait to it as well, but I think it fits really nice with the realistic tone of the face. As for the background, this was probably the most challenging part of the actual painting. I used mostly grays, greens, and browns, as well as a bit of black. And I wanted to add the wolf in there somewhere, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to make the wolf realistic, if I wanted to make the wolf sort of the main part of the image, but then I quickly decided to make Little Red Riding Hood the center of attention. So I decided to just put the wolf sort of like in the background, the very top right corner, hiding within the trees, the darkness of the trees. And I made the wolf just a regular wolf. I didn't do any sort of fantastical creature with this. Again, Little Red Riding Hood was the main focus of the piece. But yeah, I think just trying to figure out how to paint the trees and how to paint the background and kind of give this effect that the wolf was hiding in the background was the most difficult part of the piece. But this is something that I really like doing and challenging myself and trying to find a way to create scenery, because scenery is something that I really want to learn. And it's important that I try to incorporate this as much as possible in my upcoming work. So something that I actually really liked about the trees is that I tried to capture sort of the German style of the trees. Here in Germany, we have quite a bit of tall, lanky trees that kind of have, I don't know how to really explain it. If you look at war movies, like World War II movies, you'll notice the type of trees that they have. They're very, very tall. They have sort of like sticks, like they kind of look dead to me. I don't know. And at the very top, they've got leaves, but it's not bushy trees at all. So it's sort of that sort of magic I wanted to capture within the painting, and also having moss on the trees because it's quite an old forest. Also, another interesting tidbit of information. The Grimm brothers were inspired to write their fairy tales and to kind of just write down tales or folklores. They often got inspired by walking in the forests of Germany, and I have walked in some of the same forests that they have walked in their hometown, and the trees were incredible. Like, I'm talking like large trees that look a little bit eerie, a little bit creepy. There's hanging moss. They're very old, like you can just tell that there's history here, and that is so beautiful. You get so inspired. So I can see their point, how they'd be inspired by that. So this is something that I tried to capture in the background as well. So I'd like to thank you guys all for watching this video. If you like what you saw, please give this a big thumbs up, as well as leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you once again, and I hope you enjoy your evening.